The Ugandan coup of 25th January 1971 was a culmination of months of speculation on the tense relationship between Dr. Milton Obote, the president of Uganda, and Major General Idi Amin, the defense secretary. Initially, there were reports of heavy shooting and tank movements in the streets of Kampala. Reports had indicated that Idi Amin loyalists had an upper hand against Obote supporters in the army. Before the coup, the following had been observed. The army had undergone rapid expansion since 1964, when a mutiny had occurred involving mostly officers of the 1st Battalion Ugandan Rifles. The army's strength had been increased from 1,500 men to over 5,000 officers. Many battalions had been established in Moroto, Masaka, Mubende, Mbale, and Barara. Many soldiers had been transferred to the new barracks. There had been changes in the political and army leadership structure. The Kabaka, who was the president, had been overthrown by his prime minister, Dr. Milton Obote, in 1966. Brigadier Shaban Opolot was transferred to a new post as defense secretary. Colonel Idi Amin was promoted to brigadier and made commander of the army and the air force. The Uganda army was heavily involved in containing cattle rustling between the Karamojong, Pokot, Turkana, Dodoth, Toposa, and Jie communities. The 2nd Battalion, which was created in Moroto, was the main vanguard in stabilizing the warring parties. However, the other army units gave the Moroto barracks a lot of support. Another aspect of great importance was the emergence of the Renzururu movement in 1962. The movement involved the Bakonjo and Batwa against the Batoro. The Ugandan army was involved in mountain warfare in the most difficult terrain for a number of years. Another aspect that was critical was the fact that the Congo crisis heavily involved the Ugandan Army Command. The Ugandan army was involved in supplying the rebels with arms. Idi Amin was a choice of President Milton Obote in this exercise. General Gbenye, the leader of the Congolese rebels, had his headquarters in Uganda. It should be noted that Amin recruited some of the rebels in the Uganda army to his own force. Another aspect of importance was the coup of 1966, in which the Kabaka was overthrown. The 1966 crisis in Uganda, pitting the Prime Minister Dr. Milton Obote against President Mutesa, created a power vacuum between Obote and Idi Amin. Idi Amin created a power block at Bulange, which housed the Malire Mechanized Regiment, and at Bamnanika, which was the former residence of the Kabaka. 2,000 soldiers were recruited by Idi Amin and were trained. Another critical factor was the arrival of new armaments for the army. The arrival of tanks, armored personnel carriers, military jeeps, artillery pieces, and hardware was to tip power in favor of Idi Amin. Tanks, namely Sherman M41A variant and OT-64C armored personnel carrier, the BTR-40 and M58 jeeps and Land Rovers were bought in large quantities. Senior officers who would later command the Uganda Army under General Idi Amin were part of the Malire Mechanized Unit. They include Lieutenant Eli Aseni, Lieutenant Juma Ali, Captain Isaac Lumago, Lieutenant Kenneth Ozunzima, Lieutenant Duzman Sabuni, Moses Ali, Lieutenant Isaac Maliamungu, Captain Mustafa Adrisi, among others. These officers had been trained in Israel and Britain. On 19th December 1969, an attempt had been made on the life of Dr. Milton Obote after attending a Uganda People's Congress rally, which was also attended by Presidents Julius Nyerere, Jomo Kenyatta, and Kenneth Kaunda. Brigadier Shaban Opolot was detained after the incident. During this time, Colonel Pierino Okoya questioned the absence of Idi Amin, who had disappeared briefly. In the late 1960s, pupils of Uganda Army and Police Primary School, which was located in the 1st Battalion Ugandan Rifles, openly discussed army friction. They debated that army friction could go for or against Dr. Milton Obote or Idi Amin. When tanks and armored cars were seen in the barracks for the first time, they seemed to understand their capacities to fight on land and in water. Come January 25, 1970, Brigadier Pierino Okoya and his wife Anne Akello were assassinated in their residence in Koro village, Gulu. An investigation and inquest was conducted by the time of the coup. Brigadier Pierino was the Deputy Army Chief of Staff and commander of the 2nd Infantry Brigade based in Masaka. His death sparked friction and accusations in the army and in the local politics. A report by the Auditor General, Mr. Kibiswa, for 1969-1970 had raised queries on lost money amounting to 2,691,343 shillings in the Ministry of Defense. The buck fell on Idi Amin and Felix Onama. This message was relayed to both of them to explain loss. Obote required that Idi Amin and Felix Onama should account for the money before he left for Singapore for the Commonwealth meeting. In order to neutralize Amin, Obote made counter-moves against him. He promoted Amin to essentially ceremonial role, a title of Chief of Defense, which itself had been occupied by Major General Polot prior to detention. All powers that had been held by Amin was distributed to Brigadier Suleiman Hussein and Colonel Juma Musa, who was the newly appointed Air Force commander. On 29 September, Radio South Africa suspended programs to announce that a coup was in progress in Uganda. There had been rumors during the month of October about the arrest of Major General Idi Amin. During the inauguration of Milton Obote as Chancellor of Makerere University on the 7th October 1970, Idi Amin made an appearance and received a standing ovation from the students of the university. The inauguration was attended by President Kenyatta, Obote, Nyerere, and Kaunda. During his speech, Dr. Obote made a veiled reference that his government would deal with the corrupt people who had embezzled army funds. The push to arrest Idi Amin started in the afternoon of 24th January 1971. It was coordinated by the Minister of Interior, Basil Kiza Bataringaya, Brigadier Suleiman Hussein, the Army Chief of Staff, Colonel Juma Musa, the Air Force Chief of Staff, and the Buganda Police Chief Suleiman Duzman, and Lieutenant Colonel Oite Ojo. The meeting took place at the home of Irinayo Oriema, the Inspector General of Police. The plan involved using the men of Maliri Mechanized Regiment to arrest Amin. All along, Amin and his loyalist troops were aware of the plan, and he had access to all communication and information. Amin loyalists had started to prepare a month earlier. On 20th January 1971, Major General Idi Amin addressed senior officers of the army. During this time, he told officers to disregard the new order given on the new command structure. The order for a new command structure had been given by Dr. Milton Obote. Although 1 month was crucial in preparation for counter-moves by Amin loyalists, soldiers had been prepared for worst-case scenarios. This preparation had been going on for the past 1 year or more. Amin's residence on plot number 10 Prince Charles Drive was the command post. Messages had been sent to Amin loyalists in major army units. Amin sold the idea that Obote loyalists were planning to arrest officers suspected of not being close to the center of power. The Army Signal Unit, which was located in the 1st Battalion Uganda Rifles in Jinja, was secured. The unit was under Captain Michael Ombia, who had come back from Britain after a 1-year stint. All signal frequencies were changed, and only those involved in the coup had access to the information. Captain Charles Arube, a Sanders-trained officer, secured the barracks in Jinja on 24th January 1971. Amin loyalists secured the Maliri Mechanized Regiment. They broke into the yard which housed tanks and armored personnel carriers and drove them into battle. Suspicion had been raised about 2,000 soldiers who had been based at Bamnanika. These soldiers were earlier on forcibly deployed to other army units spread across Uganda under the supervision of Lieutenant Colonel Ito Jok. By midnight of 25th January 1971, these soldiers had been armed and were patrolling various barracks in which they were deployed. Amin loyalists secured all armories in a counteraction that Dr. Milton Obote loyalists did not expect. Many senior officers were arrested. Skirmishes followed in Kampala. The only resistance left was from the General Service Unit, which engaged soldiers from Maliri Mechanized Battalion. By early afternoon, all resistance had been quelled in Kampala. This paved the way to a radio announcement by Warrant Officer Sam Aswa giving 18 reasons for the coup. The sting operation to arrest Idi Amin backfired. Ednayo Oriema, the Inspector General of Police who was chairing the committee to arrest Amin, appeared with Amin to support the coup. Colonel Juma Musa, the new Air Force commander, also supported the coup. The coup took place when Obote was attending the Commonwealth Heads of State meeting in Singapore from 11th January to 24th January 1971. Amin was sworn in as President of Uganda by Justice Sheridan, the Chief Justice of Uganda. The swearing-in ceremony, which took place at Kololo airstrip, was a major public event. Obote's homestead in Kololo was heavily guarded by members of the Maliri Mechanized Regiment. Later, Obote's family was allowed to leave Uganda for Tanzania. Idi Amin continued with tours of army barracks and meet the people to thank them for supporting him. I wish to make a special appeal to you all to subscribe, comment, and give a like. I'll continue to share my experience in this piece of rare history. Thank you.